It was just one quick thing that was said, but you know what? I was like, I can take any one quick thing and turn it into a full-ass video. You want to see how? Watch this.
Say my name.
Jam, but you just become best friends. Yep.
I love the poorly educated.
What there, pal? Shake on it. Hi diddly hey, neighborino, Jim Dempsey. And Phil, of course, and also you. How about that? Let's do it. All right, so we are talking about a video cycle. I'm meta-commenting on this, right? I feel like this happens every 6 months, and it happens always with the same people. It's always Rick Beato or Matt Walsh in sequence. When this happened, I had to check back on it and be like, yo, this wasn't a repeat episode that everyone just discovered? Like, what the fuck? Because we've done this a bunch before, right? So someone makes a video saying rock music is dead, and a bunch of butthurt YouTubers come out and are like, no way, bro, no way, bro, no way, bro. And every time I'm like, dude, really? You really? This is what I got to scroll through to get to like something else on YouTube now, huh? Alright, whatever. What the fuck ever. I don't care. But this one interested me. I was like, I can draw out just a little bit from this. I caught wind of something on it and I was like, alright, here we go. Now I'm interested, slightly. Let's introduce our players. So, Jim Dempsey is a man who knows the radio world like I know death metal. Not like music radio, but I know talk radio. Like I know death metal. I know the players, and I know the game. My dad was an early adopter to the Rush Limbaugh phenomenon, so I was exposed to that growing up a lot, and yeah. That's where I was with that. I just was attuned to it. So there was this cat in Seattle that had a show locally for like a year or two. He was from an LA radio station, and by the end of his year or two here, it was very obvious that he doesn't live here. He's just down in LA, faking like he lived in Seattle to do a show. And that guy was a young Ben Shapiro. Fast forward some years, he becomes an internet sensation. He's got this stable, this little franchise outfit. And that includes, along with the flaming homosexual Michael Knowles and flaming homosexual and professional geezer Andrew Clavin, also just some dude named Matt. And then hereto referred as Human Brick Matt Walsh. I like that. I'll roll with that. Now, a lot of can I just say that there's a lot of problems in society. There's like an actual issue of deep dysfunction sourced around people taking things too seriously. What does that mean? It shows you that there is not really a patriarchy anymore, because who takes things too seriously? Besides men that come from like New Jersey or New York City? Yeah. So that's all I'm saying, alright? Like, women just clearly have a disproportionate effect on the discourse today, because everybody takes everything very seriously, which is something that women do. The Daily Wire is a really good litmus for this. Let's go through these in turn. So you got Human Brick Matt Walsh with his like Twitter bio that theocratic fascist, and people take that literally and are like, oh my god, he said it himself, there you go. And I'd be like, it literally is a source of dysfunction in society that people just look at things and take them seriously. And then there's Ben Shapiro. He's a talk radio host with a law school degree. So of course he's an angry man. And he's got like a bunch of kids. So yeah, like, and then he's a robot also. Like, before there was AI, there was Ben Shapiro, the droid. So they set him to angry, and that's why he's like that. But how seriously are you going to take him, all right? Then there's the old guy. Like, I don't think anyone takes him seriously. But just on the note of people that clearly have butt sex with other men, such as Andrew Clavin, can we get to that guy Michael Knowles? That's a funny one. I'd be like, why is this such an issue for Republicans? Like, bro, any man that has ever touched a woman, but certainly any man that's gonna go home to a woman, can hear Michael Knowles mimic his wife and be like, that is not a man that is going home to a woman at all. Because although your wife would not be listening to your radio show under any circumstance, that doesn't happen, it would get back to her. Any man would know. You don't make fun of your wife in that way, like with that dumb shit thing that he does when his wife, like that's not something that, like straight men, because you only make that mistake one fucking time. Am I wrong? That's clear. Like, Michael Knowles' wife is a 6'8" black guy named Eric, and that's fine. Like, Jim Dempsey's a man with a high tolerance for the fruits, but you know what? Like, it's 2026, bro. This is quaint. Like, come on. I'm just surprised they do such a good edit, because I mean, when you listen to him on the radio, you can hear it in his voice, but when you actually like watch the YouTube clips, you don't actually see Eric's hand, like, pumping his head down, but that's what's happening when he's broadcasting. I think it's kind of beautiful. I'd be like, it's a love story, bro. We can tell, like, when you're mimicking your wife, we bet Eric's, giving you the old reacher on there. But anyway, back to the brick. I'm sorry, I really like talking about men having sex. What can I say? I don't understand why Michael Knowles doesn't talk more about his sex life like that. I'd find it more interesting. I'd listen to his show much more. All I'm saying, we're gonna pipe the music down here, fellas. So I want to throw this one about the brick. What's with the beard thing? I don't like beards. I know I need to shave. I'm shaving in like a fucking week here, but I don't like this whole thing now where we all just walk around and we haven't shaved. None of us have shaved in a week. Like, God, you look like a fucking Muslim, all right? You look like a homeless guy. That's all I'm saying. All I'm saying. All right, so let's discuss this. The one thing that actually interested me about the fact that everyone's yelling about a guy yelling about an obvious, correct fact that rock music is not a cultural relevant thing and has not been for a long, long time.
Or that the culture is disappearing. It's being erased. American culture is vanishing. So on that note, today I want to take a look at American culture is just a corporation. Something that used to be a hugely
Can I side note that? American culture is just a corporation. It is not an unfair read of American culture. It's a very limited perspective and a bit crass. But there is actually, like, you cannot get an honest assessment of American history if you aren't thinking of it as a business proposition. America is a business nation. England was a nation of merchants or shopkeepers, right? Said Napoleon. And, like, the colonies were all essentially business interests. So, that is true. That said, I had this disagreement with my friend, the Fay Goat, about American culture years ago. Because she used to say, like, dude, America doesn't really have culture. And I was like, that's fucking nonsense. Like, American culture is so broad and so pervasive that you don't think of it as being uniquely American anymore. But America has a distinct culture. Like, it's just that now the whole world wears blue jeans and eats at McDonald's, like hamburgers and hot dogs, and listens to jazz and blues and rock music, etc. Like, yeah, that's American culture. And also, it's also corporations and a lot of big business bullshit. And anymore, it's a lot less, it's still the hamburgers and the hot dogs and the big businesses selling you the fucking pills and shit. But, The blues and the jazz and the rock are they're all kind of hurting these days.
American culture is just a corporation. Something
Yes.
that used to be a hugely influential, unique, and distinctly American element of our culture, which in recent years has all but evaporated. And that would be rock music. I have some
Distinctly American rock music. The British are very surprised by this.
personal ties to this issue.
They're not actually.
Podcaster with my very own fancy fish cam. In the early 2000s, I was a small market rock DJ. It's not
That's true.
something I talk about very often, although every now and then various media outlets like to bring it up. But today I'm going to make an exception because I now realize that
It's been the most boring rock show ever. Here's a new.
That's facts right there. Oh my god. I would love to hear Matt Walsh radio rock DJ.
Song by Guns N' Roses called Sweet Child of Mine, and yeah, welcome to Matt Walsh Rock.
I fucking hate that song, Sweet Child of Mine. I fucking hate that song like I hate Led Zeppelin, except actually worse than I hate Led Zeppelin.
Hour.
in that capacity, I witnessed the last gasps of the entire genre of rock and roll. I saw firsthand how it entered a slow motion death spiral, and it would never recover.
Side note on that one. No, he didn't. Rock music as a philosophical art form or a movement died sometime in the early 80s. The last rock album released was Back in Black. The last word on rock was rock and roll ain't gonna die, as they shoved it into its grave. The rock music since then, what came out of rock music was about getting it on. That was what rock music was. It was the rock and roll, the vibe. That was the swinging beat of it, all right? Like, that was the whole original intent behind rock music. And it was a thing for a generation, and it morphed into something else. Like, it became this, the idea lasted for, like, a full generation. But by the 70s, it had kind of bloated into, like, the whole Led Zeppelin and Pink Floyd thing. And then there was the punk movement, because people were rejecting Led Zeppelin and Pink Floyd specifically. But the punk bands all went on to become other things that are barely rock music as such. And then there was, the whole 90s thing, and that was corporate bullshit, like Nirvana. So they seized on something that was going on, like, in kind of a niche in the world, and presented it as a rock revival, but it was just labeled bullshit. It descended very quickly into, like, nonsense, plastic-ass collective soul garbage, and that wasn't fucking rock music as such. It wasn't ever fucking music. It was always sit in the bedroom angry, like too angry to make out kind of music. Well, there was a lot of make-out music in the 90s, but as we remember, like, Nirvana was never... I can scarce imagine a Nirvana song you'd want to have sex to. Especially Polly. So, we're getting back to these guys here. Do I adjust the camera? Sorry, Phil. We're live doing this. What am I here? Is that good? More? Alright. Matt Walsh interrupted us here. Let's tune back in here. Oh, shit. Let's tune back in here.
Firsthand how it entered a slow motion death spiral, and it would never recover for reasons that no one has ever really explained. A cultural institution, a global phenomenon, one that is distinctly American.
No, it's not. Rock music is not distinctly American. What the fuck are you talking about? The Beatles and Stones are from England. Everyone else, like, where are you starting in terms of rock music? Elvis didn't start rock music. I would say rock music had a big foundational part in American culture and American history up to, the last couple of decades. To say it's distinctly American is not accurate in the slightest.
That's all I cared about in this entire discussion. I don't give a fuck what people think about rock music. We already discussed that. It's fucking dead, bro. Anyone saying otherwise is fucking wrong. Matt Walsh is so correct on that score that he doesn't even realize how correct he is. So I gotta school him on that one. Sorry, Matt, but yeah, like, you're buying into the progressive bullshit on that score or something. I don't even know what to deal with that. Now, as to what WYATT said about not distinctly American, I'd be like, okay, I don't want to single him out. The internet spreads a lot of like revision history, and history tends to be a lot of revision. But it's amazing to see like the internet speeding that process up in real time so that we, like in real life, can just see our history being rewritten right in front of us. That is the one way in which you can actually really apply like Orwell to today. Is like, yeah, just at a certain point it just happens so fast that it'll happen as you're happening. But here's the thing, bro. You talk about music, and this is the thing, okay, so a lot of these guys, why don't they understand why Matt Walsh is correct? Because they're underground metal sorts. They're talking about 6 Feet Under. If you have videos about 6 Feet Under, you are on a different level than Matt Walsh is, alright? Like, one thing that the guy says correctly in here, like, why are you turning to Matt Walsh for your entertainment news? Well, you in the underground at least. Because that guy's talking about a broader cultural thing. On a broader cultural level, yeah, what the fuck is relevant in rock music in the last 20 years? Like, since at least maybe like The Strokes, which was also more corporate bullshit. Stuff I knew of 20 years previous that was like, oh, well now like this is a big thing for whatever reason. Right? Like, utter bullshit on that score. So like, these guys are just living in the underground bubbles, and this talking about something that a guy making a broader correct point, you know. So that's one thing. But you talk about music for a living, you should know a little more about just the broader context. So I don't want to single him out for the idea, I just want to single him out for the inexcusable level of participation in the broader cultural amnesia. Rock and roll is distinctly American. And did it originate with Elvis Presley? Well, technically that's correct. But I'm going to not give him points for that because he's not identifying, like, it does begin with Chuck Berry and Little Richard. It exactly begins right there. That is exactly where it begins. That's exactly what it was. It was contemporary to Elvis Presley, but no, it was not Elvis Presley. Elvis was rockabilly. Chuck Berry was the rock and roll guy. Chuck Berry remains the king of rock and roll, although it is, in fact, the title is not credited enough. But that's just the simple facts on that. And then there's Bill Haley, the first rock superstar and the first corporate bullshit rock, because he was not really a rock musician. But then there was Buddy Holly, who was the first real, like, in terms of white music, like the first rock and roll phenomenon. Lemmy pointed that one out too. Like, Lemmy and I will both attest to that score, and I think he was actually there to see it, so he knows as well as my dad would have. But yeah, and then from there it goes on to the Beatles and the Rolling Stones. But that was the British invasion, and it was called that because all of a sudden here were these British bands doing this thing that, you know, America had been doing for a decade by this point. And he cited, well, the Beatles is an interesting example of a rock band, but we'll give him that. They are culturally associated to rock music forever, so, you know, it's really nitpicking to go too far into that. But the Rolling Stones, they were an R&B band. Charlie Watts actually hated rock music, and so we can, yeah, grant that they essentially transmorphed into like what becomes the essence of rock. Personally, I feel like the Rolling Stones is a much better band than the Beatles all around. And yeah, they came to summarize rock like a dozen years after rock had already established itself. By that point, it was like kind of the link between like old original rock and like the bloat that would come, that it was the first step in what becomes Led Zeppelin and Pink Floyd, and then punk has to come along and be like, no way, bro. But they weren't attuned to rock. By this point, we're a generation removed. So all of the original punk bands, as I think I said in a previous video, are like bands that you don't associate as much to rock music per se, like certainly not to punk, because they were like doing their own thing, and by this point they're doing things totally different than rock music. I was personally always astonished when I'd hear like punk music growing up. I'd be like, it doesn't sound anything like this Knot and Vinegar you expect from the memes, right? You see punks in the Saturday morning cartoons and you'd be like, that's not That's not this shit, right? So yeah, that's all. That's all I wanted to get at was just that's an inexcusably bad take in an otherwise actually like pretty fair video. Props to the guy for not just like reacting straight out internet style against Matt Walsh without any context. I approve of that. I just don't approve of that one single take, and I'd be like, that merits 20 minutes of Jim Dempsey's time to just like come back at. No, dude, rock and roll, jazz, and blues are three forms of music that are very distinctly American, and those are like three bedrock principles of modern American culture. There are other elements of American, but those are all predicated on American foundational cultural things, like things that predate recorded music inform that. Because all of these things fall into their context. And that's kind of what we're getting at here, right? Like, so yeah, the rock context is a long time ago. Rock and roll is boomer music. It does not count anymore. It's long since dead. These guys are just full of shit. They're underground guys saying like, oh no, this guy's incorrect for like being attuned to mainstream society, and just pointing out something that has been like true for a decade in mainstream society. Like, he's so far behind the times, it's astonishing. And everyone else is like, well, I'm 30 years behind that apparently. So I still like AC/DC, so rock music isn't dead. Put her there, pal. Quid pro quo. And I'm just like, you know what? We're done here. Jim Dempsey, taking YouTubers to school. WYATT, we love you, but get your facts straight so that when we together conquer Canada and make it the 51st through 60th states, we can make sure that we're, giving them the good word too. All right, Dempsey out. Catch you on the next time.